Sorry about this. Let's see here.
Did you just move us to the top of the list, Oscar? Because
yeah, is that all right?
Because Ned's just getting off a plane in Berlin.
Oh, okay.
It'd be cool if we were later so that he can get on the call and do his half of
yeah,
what we're
sure.
doing.
Let's
I appreciate
do,
that. Push back down to 6.
Yeah, of course. Let's just move. All right, so let's start with at least some of the topics that people want to talk about. So the decouple whisper key, then status desktop, and then there was one more thing. What was this one?
Can you hear me?
Yeah. So that one, and then we can do desktop, and then we can go into infra updates and so on. And then we can do the web refresh at the end if that is not playing.
Okay, Oscar. We're live on
streaming?
Yep.
Okay, awesome.
Yep.
Cool. So first of all, thanks everyone for tuning in for the third core dev meeting. We have a HackMD link, and yeah, okay. Do you want to get started, Andrea, with the decouple whisper key from wallet? So the context around this is that it's a dependency for the hardware light product launch, and the goal is to discuss progress and next steps.
Yeah, so for now we posed the Swarm because we started working on the Java card, and I know that we are doing a lot of development for PFS. So I think we can maybe pause it for now and start maybe the discussions and continue the discussion, and then start the development after we finish maybe the PFS. But I would like to understand if it's like doable. I don't know exactly how long it would take like to finish that part. And for sure we need to decouple the keys for before using the Java card, but it can also be done, I think, as last thing, so we can continue with the development for the hardware wallet, I think.
Do we have anyone who can speak to the PFS side of things? I don't know if Andrea or Pedro is on.
I can. So basically, we're probably, in terms of timing, we got about a month still to finish off. So we can follow the process, the process on these cuts. So we got basically like builds talking to each other. The status quo part is basically implemented. We need to go for it and just make sure that like it's safe enough and like some corners. Most of the work has been done. Now what we're doing, I'll probably give the update for PFS as well. We're just basically like, in some cases, there might be that the bundle cannot be exchanged. So then we're not able to send PFS messages. And so we're finding a UX solution to that. There's this CASPOS. So now we sort of agreed on how to do this. Essentially we're gonna force the user to sort of like send a contact request in that cases. But it just needs designs basically. Once that's done, then we have an end-to-end flow and everything is, like it's very covered. It's just a matter of, finishing off the documentation and look at the corner cases basically.
And then just something I want to confirm with respect to decoupling for whisper key from wallet. It's not a blocker in terms of development of sort of the general integration. It's a blocker in terms of actually moving to production for the hardware light wallet. Is my understanding correct?
Yeah, it's correct. For development, we can continue having just one key and downloading the key from the Java card to the client, even if it's the same. But then, when we want to use it in production and ship the cards and everything, we need them to be separated. So for the development for now, it's fine. We just need to be sure that we can do it before using them, actually, as you said.
All right, cool. Anything else on this topic? Any questions or other thoughts or concerns? All right, cool. So status desktop. So context is that we are planning on using desktop internally instead of Slack. And we want to ideally agree on what features we must have working in order to not have a detrimental impact on team performance. And the goal is to collect sort of a list of features that can be implemented in a reasonable amount of time and will satisfy 90% of the use cases. So Vitaly, do you want to take it away?
Yes. Hi, guys. So yeah, briefly, yeah, our objective is to use Status Desktop internally instead of Slack. And well, we initially had a set of goals that we've defined for our beta launch or like high priority issues. And they have all comprised of implementing reliable messaging for one-on-one chats and public chats, and very little functionality outside of it. Some profile management, QR codes, and account creation, and that's it. But obviously, and this has been raised both internally and externally by other teams, we need to be clear what set of features we want to have once we basically are green-lighted to substitute Slack for Status Desktop. And we have not yet, we thought of maybe making some poly questionnaire and also using some smaller groups like this dev call to get a closer, better understanding of what is actually needed and is used by people internally at Status. And so we don't have yet a list of, of suggestions, something that is, set in stone or anything. There have been just some items floating around, like mentions have been mentioned a couple of times. Obviously, app should be stable on multiple chats during prolonged usage, which is still ongoing. On the other hand, some stuff like app reliability, I'd say, can only be nailed down once more and more people are using it. So it would be helpful for the product as well once more people start using it. But yeah, so roughly we just want to collect and start basically picking around and gathering input from folks what they think is important. And but on the other hand, we have to stop. Basically, we have to draw a line, collect features up until certain threshold, because we want actually to start using it as fast as possible. So this means that we wouldn't want to include features that would be quite hard to implement, especially if those features would impact not only Status Desktop code, but also library code like Status Go if we need some extensions to protocol, etc., etc. So ideally, for this initial launch, we would just like to have a list of features that we basically verify that they are not going to have much impact outside of the Status React repository. And we also don't want to, launch a tool and then see that people are actually, impacted detrimentally by lack of features. So yeah, that's.
I have a question, Vitaly, regarding the use of desktop every day. I think one of the critical issues would be how easy it is to update. Ideally, it would be very easy to update every day, both on Linux and on macOS. Is there a way that is planned to have it auto-update, or at least being just one command line?
This is not yet in the works, but I'm making notes. So yeah, I understand that this is important. I just realized, it would be good basically because as I understand, on iOS or Android, you can update them via built-in system functionality, and this is not available on desktop at all.
Yeah, if it was like through... because since we'll be iterating really quickly, people, I think, either will get fed up of going through an extensive, every day trying to update if they see any broken feature or something. Ideally this would be done automatically so that people lose as little time as possible. And the other thing that I see is URLs. Right now they're not clickable. That would be a basic feature to make it easy for people to share URLs and click it and be able to follow them.
I would just so one question I would like to pose is, or first with the initial framing of a lot of talk has been about replacing Slack and so on, and I think maybe that's not necessarily the right mental model, because people used to use IRC for a lot of open source development, Linux and so on, for decades and so on. And they didn't have threads, they didn't have emoticons, they didn't have private group messages necessarily, and like all these features. So I think it might make more sense to look at something like that as opposed to trying to replicate Slack features and so on, because I've seen that suggested a few times. So I guess with that framing, I would like to ask what is blocking people from using desktop every day right now? What sort of the top 1 or top 3 things that's like, oh, I can't use this?
For me, again, it would be the fact that changing rooms, changing channels is really slow. So that would be one of the first, low-hanging fruits that I would pick.
Hey Pedro, just to comment a bit on some of things, like we haven't yet started working at all on the auto update, but the links not being clickable, this has been in the works for a while now. There is just some blocker in the core RM desktop library that prevents us from clicking. Basically, text components embedded in other text components do not process on press, therefore clicks are not working, but it should be done soon, I hope. And the changing channels thing, so it's been also partially in progress because there have been multiple improvements to the underlying scroll view component functionality also. As a temporary measure, maybe not so temporary, we also thought of basically implementing some kind of a spinning wheel so that once you change to a long and intense public chat, you don't get a feeling that you've clicked but the event has not been processed. So that to improve some user feedback, because it's really annoying.
Yeah, makes sense. Cool.
Are there any other things that people are blocked from in terms of using desktop?
Like if I was using an application as a development tool for an open source software, I would expect a few features that are not necessarily the same as in a chat, like a secure messenger. So it's like markdown support and threads and stuff like this that make open source collaboration more efficient. So I'm a little bit curious, like where do we draw the line between a good user experience for developers and a good user experience for people?
So while I agree it's two different user stories, I would like to push back why you think it's necessary, considering IRC doesn't have it. And with Markdown, for example, you can just use gists and threads. I mean, you can, I don't know, like is that like a must for you?
It's something that makes collaboration about code more efficient, right? And yeah, sure, there's the argument that we're going to be using status because we're going to be using status, but that means that we'll be communicating less efficiently about code, and we're developers. So the first question is, are we optimizing for the right people? And the second thing is like, how do we ensure that people actually want to use it?
To answer, at least attempt to answer some of your questions, I don't think we're yet sure what category of users status desktop will eventually target. As I understand now, but yeah, please correct me if I'm wrong, that's just my line of thinking. Our initial objective here is to make it usable for us internally as much as possible in a reasonable amount of time. And from that, we can jump basically to phase 2, see what features do we need to make this an acceptable communication tool at a larger scale. Right now, at least one of the problems that we have that stems from our limited usage of status desktop is lack of attention to basically the long-term stability issues. For instance, from time to time, we still have some crashes that do not have a proper reproducibility pattern, etc. It would be much easier if more people were using it, because then we would get a much better understanding of how the tool is used and what are still the problematic areas. Because although we, at the moment, we kind of, let's say 90%, the objective of reliable basic messaging is met at around 90% estimate, maybe more. Still, really, to make it usable for us as developers, we lack, one can say, a huge amount of additional features. On the other hand, we might make it quite usable with a limited set of features. Because if we wait until we have all of those additional stuff implemented, then it might take a long time, and we just want to optimize the return of investment, so to speak. So yeah, the idea is to make a compromise, essentially. Yeah, we have to make a compromise with what features will not, impact our performance too much. Maybe make a vote, decide if, let's say, if for 90% of people the basic set will work, then we go with that and then implement those additional things. Yeah, well, so sorry for talking too much, but that's the basic idea. And I've made a note about the Markdown. I've seen you suggesting it earlier, and the People Ops channel, I think. And that's a really good point. But I think we'll just make a democratic vote in the end and see how many people support which features, and then go on based from that. Something, well, that's just my thinking.
Yeah, the point about Markdown wasn't really, well, it's a nice feature to have, right? But it was more to illustrate that developers don't necessarily crave the same features as well, now I hear an unknown user group, right? But like a simple way to increase adoption would probably be a bridging feature. Bridge to, I'd say, Riot, because Riot is kind of our hub where we bridge to we bridge to Riot through to Gitter as well and Slack. So if we had a Riot bridge, that would be an easy way to drive up chatter in the channel, and it wouldn't feel so wrong. And it would also be easier for us to speak to the larger community that doesn't use status yet. And I think it's unreasonable to expect that everybody will hop on, like everybody that we want to talk to will hop on status desktop just like that.
I agree with that, and I think bridging is definitely a good point. I guess one way of looking at this with, like to some extent, like this Markdown and threads and these things, you can. It's almost like a skin, right? Like we could imagine that if our application protocol is so general enough that this is, you could have different ways of manifesting a UI where one would be optimized for developers and one would be optimized for quick chat, for example. I don't know if that's that. It would have been interesting UX exploration. I don't know if people have any thoughts on that. It might be a bit off topic, but.
I just thought about something tangentially related when Jacek mentioned bridging, and you Oscar mentioned additional features that we can kind of scan off top. And basically the fundamental question, like for me, because I'm not really expert in the protocol side of things, what features that, let's say, developers make heavy use of are not available right now on status due to the limitations of this underlying protocol. I do recall that a couple of months ago, someone has been talking about like things like reactions, that they might be difficult to implement on Whisper, but I might be confusing things. Maybe there is something else. Also, like for instance, about bridging, how do we make it properly decentralized? Are we going to reuse mail servers, or for instance, split it up across status desktop instances in a decentralized fashion. Maybe there have been a body of work already done that, for instance, I have no idea about. Maybe there are some other features that are very hard to implement due to protocol limitations, and this would mean that we can skip them for now. Not sure.
Images would be one thing, right?
Images?
Attachments in general. At least currently, but maybe there's some clever way of doing that, like you have some integration with IPFS or so on.
Oh, I see.
As to bridging, you might want to talk to Hutch or possibly Noman. I believe they did the initial bridging between Write and Slack.
Yeah, bridging is probably like a bot that we would have to run.
Yeah.
Run on our infrastructure that would make a decentralized bridge of any sort that people run. We just need one that it's basically a crutch that it's not core functionality, let's put it this way. On the protocol level, what's also missing is like in general, not attachments, but the chat protocol itself right now conveys text. And we need something which is, I don't know, hypertext or whatever you want to call it. And there's a million solutions out there. Like we can just be sending Markdown to each other, but yeah, we need a way to distinguish, to tell the other guys what kind of text they're looking at, basically.
Yeah, just a MIME type thing.
Yeah, like a MIME type or whatever, right? But tell the other client, like, you're getting a piece of HTML here, render it that way. And we need to be able to switch that in case, so that we can use it for those different use cases maybe, and stuff like this.
I guess in the interest of time, maybe we should move on. Does someone have any sort of final thoughts on must-haves? All right, cool. So let's move into, I guess we can, is Ned online?
Yes, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Okay, cool. Yeah. Do you want to go, you and Michael want to go through the web refresh?
Yeah, I think I can just generally touch on these ideas that we spoke about from a design point of view and not into the technical or the platform aspects of it. Basically, what we're intending to do is look at this system as a whole and kind of be a little more design agnostic, I think, like reevaluate all of these things that we use currently and how we can optimize this better for functionality and usability for everybody. You know, if you think about it, and the reference might not be right, as an operating system, as opposed to like this brand language in a way, right? It's more that whatever agnostic or anti-design or whatever route we choose visually, it still will become a strong language based on its, consistency. So that's kind of what we're thinking along those lines. If we're going to move to a decentralized platform, for example, with Ghost, what are these elements and constraints of these things, and how can we start to build one language together, which bridges visual design and development or engineering? It's like almost one unified language that we would all use together that would make a really nice statement about how we are and how we operate internally, that could also differentiate us from other people that might seemingly to look like us. So that's kind of a roundabout idea.
Yeah. So the idea is that the production platform is the development platform to the degree that it can be possible, and that basically everybody can interface there, and we can become much more public facing and integrative, not only with ourselves, but with the community is a primary goal. So there's this, the principles and design that we've started as a HackMD document. There'll also be an ask going out this week where we're hoping to get core devs to contribute to extensions of the principles that are more product specific, which we can use for the web refresh. So there's a linked document in the HackMD as well. The first implementation that we've done with Ghost is the hackathon site right now. So this was based on Ned's design, and we've done that in Figma, which the design team is using. And we're moving towards being able to embed that in the website so that everybody, either applications or any of the design things, can be done interactively with the community. We've got Fiddle embedded just as a proof of concept right here. So that's a tool that we're looking to integrate really well with this. And so primary thing about Ghost is that we have here a place where the average user can basically enter content, but with the code injection feature that we have for individual pages, basically in headers and footers, we can put things in there for everybody granularly, which really reduces the size that the page is going to deliver of overall scripts. And so these things are kind of important in terms of moving back here to the document. About how it is that we can do Swarm and IPFS integration. It was really, really cool. There's a link in here that Jacek did a proof of concept together with Jacob. So primarily we're looking to design for the future rather than for the current state. But we definitely want to be backwards compatible. And so this is where it is that we're looking for integration with the core developers, is in moving these things forward so that our web presence is in Web3 as opposed to Web yesterday. So that's where we're looking for engineering input and integrating ourselves in the process of where you guys have been already for the last year. That about nails it for me. I mean, everything's in these documents that you can follow through. There's a lot of links in there and stuff, and you guys can look a little bit deeper into where it is that we're at. Ned?
Yes.
Cool. So what are people's general thoughts on this? I guess also with respect to sort of using Ghost for this, and if people have any sort of concerns or thoughts, and just on a technical level. And is there someone who's particularly interested in joining this and pushing this forward? And maybe more generally, like what specifically do you need in terms of developers for actually like getting the initial work done?
I think right now, I mean, for the initial work to get done, what we want to do is just basically port all of our front-facing websites over for the mini web refresh before DevCon, and we've got that pretty well handled. It's more of a future music sort of thing. You know, how do we actually do this on IPFS and Swarm, and how do we potentially then integrate it into the application as an app? So not only that we have chat and browsing, but we actually have the first blogging platform or website creation platform in the future. I'd really like to see that that's what Status announces at some point. It's like, here's your decentralized, you know, blogging platform that's integrated with us. So it's more of a discussion at this point, and it's more of a content ask for the web refresh that we have a little bit more granular explanation of all the aspects of Status. So technical input and language on those HackMD documents would be really great, that we had that additional language when we're updating the website for Incubate, for Nimbus, for Embark and whatever. Yeah. And in terms of security, I mean, Corey, I guess could talk a little bit about that, where we're at. I mean, we're just looking at a self-hosting solution now so that we can roll our own authorization. Corey, you want to talk about that a little bit and where we're at with that?
Yeah, you basically nailed it on the head there. We'll be using, at least temporary, because they don't, Ghost's platform doesn't offer two-factor authentication. We'll be switching to a self-hosted solution where we run a two-factor authentication proxy that's going to use probably your GitHub credentials or Google credentials, and then enable two-factor authentication on top of that, because we want the whole thing to basically have that. Since they don't offer it, we have to do our own.
Right. So the security considerations are, how are we going to actually do that on IPFS or Swarm? I mean, we know how we're going to be doing that. in the legacy system, but how do we integrate our own authentication and basically the technologies that we use into a blogging platform?
Yes, I think that's the interesting point, right? Like, what does it mean to be an author here in the system? Because you can put all the static stuff on IPFS, whatever, that's fine. But I wonder if there's some sort of overlap here with identity solution we're working on, and also the sort of past work that's been done around decentralized content discovery and the discovery tab and so on. Maybe there's something there where we can use like a basic version of identity to sort of have authorship and then structure sort of the content, how content gets filtered using sort of some discovery work.
Yes,
I don't know. There might be something there.
The way I understand it right now is we're probably just going to be interacting, publishing in Ghost on our own host, and then we're just going to be mirroring that to IPFS as soon as possible. But what does it mean to actually be able to act as an author or as an editor on IPFS? Yeah, I have no idea about that. I'd like to see it though. So yeah, identity and integration with where you guys are already at would be awesome assistance to have thinking in that area.
So the way I see it just naively is that you have a status. If you have core contributors, that's like a list of some keys, right? And then they have some space where they can post things, for example. And then if our people in larger community post things, they could maybe post it to status in some form, and then you would have this sort of this decentralized discovery thing. And that's sort of what there was exploratory work on this a while back when it comes to Discover and sort of surfacing that in the app. So I think maybe we can revisit some of those ideas. I don't know if Goran's on the call.
Yeah, do y'all have documents for that type of stuff? I'd love to read over it to see how it fits.
We have, don't have them. I'll try to dig them up.
Yeah, we're talking after this.
Yeah.
Cool. Thank you.
Well, technically, if you put things on, if you put things on Swarm, basically what you do is that you have an ENS that points to the most recent refresh of the site, and I guess there's a way to use that to curate the content as well.
Let me ask you a question, Jacek. Do you see it as possible for us to have, like, let's say our main website being served on IPFS and Swarm by DevCon, just a basic version of it, really stripped down?
I don't see the "and" there really. It's in there. And then, like, we can host it, but either we have to run our own web server, or our own IPFS server, which is, yeah, I guess.
Is there any reason why we shouldn't?
No real improvement. No, but like running our own IPFS server doesn't really make it that different. Well, it's a little bit, it's nice, it's cool. Swarm, I would just be worried that they're going to wipe the content, because they do that every now and then. So then you have to sort of quickly re-upload it.
Okay, well, that's just an issue of the system. I would just like to be present on the systems to the degree that we can be, you know, just being on the front edge of it. By DevCon, it would just be, you know, in our character to be saying we're pushing the boundaries to the degree that we can. It has these limitations, okay, but we do our best effort and then we iterate.
Yeah, so Swarm were hosting their own conference website on Swarm, and it worked fine.
Maybe we could, yeah, go ahead.
I was just saying, one thing to consider is that, at least with IPFS, I mean, Infura offers an IPFS API, and I guess for now, they allow you to pin to Infura services. So, I mean, it's not the most like decentralized approach to it, but you don't have to run your own IPFS node. You could pin it to Infura.
Yeah, well, I think for DevCon, we don't really need to be worried about that. I mean, it is an industry solution. We are wanting to move away from it, but it doesn't mean that we can't experiment with it just for our presence.
Actually, running it on Infura is excellent. I mean, there's no difference between us running it and Infura running it, and Infura probably does it better.
So does anybody have a problem with that? I mean, we do have our principles. We're moving away from these things, but for something like this, how do you guys all feel about that?
I guess one thing I'm just curious about is what we will be doing with sort of the existing, because we have a bunch of sort of static websites right now. So what will the migration process look like for something? I mean, like ideas such as I am, for example. How would that work?
Well, I mean, essentially what the plan is just to take all of our current content out of the existing websites and put them into individual installs of Ghost, which have a unified theme and unified navigation across all of the sites. Well, and also the design principles that Ned's talking about, which he's hoping to discuss this week at the design meetup in Berlin, is that we're paring everything down just for a real minimal sort of approach that's very, very informational and very, very lightweight. So it's really just about serving updated content that we already have inside of from Ghost, essentially. And so that wouldn't involve documentation site and stuff like that. Those would be external sites with external links, but to the degree possible to just have a very, very pared down and updated content of our existing sites, whoever it is that would want to participate in that. It looks like that would be Incubate, and who knows if Studio is going to be ready by that point. And these individual projects, People Ops would just determine how many individual sites there are that we would serve. It's just about it. It's just a question of time, right?
So if I can just say something regarding to Swarm. So I unfortunately I joined a bit late, so I didn't hear the whole conversation. But were we talking about running our own Swarm gateway, just to be a bit part of that ecosystem? Is that what we're talking about?
Well, I think what we're talking about is how do we serve our current an updated web presence delivered via Ghost on both Swarm and IPFS, and right. And Jacek had done this proof of concept, so I was asking about that, and then the discussion went to whether we're running our own nodes, our own servers or not, is where we're at in the discussion.
So just some update on that. So on Embark, like we support Swarm, and we're really interested in continuing to support Swarm. The issue that there's a lot of breaking changes, so things break easily, or the gateway sometimes doesn't work as expected, or is delayed in being updated, or the content is wiped out once in a while. So we had a meeting with them last week. Actually, we were on their weekly stand-up, and we discussed something. We report some issues that we were having with Swarm, which we're looking at, and we also agreed to basically maintain a JavaScript library for Swarm, because currently there's no working library. There's a bunch of them, but they don't work anymore. So we thought just to maintain our own, and if we as Status could, we also would have a gateway or some alternatives to Infura and to the official gateway itself. I think it would be a really big plus, as it would make us a very integral part of that ecosystem.
Yes.
So I have some good news there.
Yeah.
So we did set up a gateway together with Jacob the other day. So we're sort of just finishing off that setup so that it's solid. And then we'll be publishing a link to it. There's a link to it already somewhere. I don't know. We talked about it in one of the channels.
That link is in the marketing channel. I'll grab that link. And just look for
it's in the marketing channel.
So
the thing about running
the document as well. In the WIP document, it's linked under Swarm, Jacek, that we have linked in the HackMD document. That link is in there as well.
Okay.
Concept.
So on Embark, we typically.
So the point is that running our own gateway is one thing, right? But that gateway, what that is the same set of nodes as swarmgateways.net. So we're sort of, if they go down, then a lot of the content goes down, obviously.
I mean, this is really less of an issue for me because we have a standard web presence, and we're just saying let's serve whatever we can wherever we can, and it is what it is. Yeah, but
yeah, one other thing for I guess everyone who's researching Swarm and is really interested in getting this to work with Swarm is there's also, if you want to have a DApp or a website that's like decentralized, right? You want to, I mean, you could do it without it, but a lot of people are now moving towards trying to get resolution through ENS. And there's already a standard for, well, there's a standard being formed right now for content resolution, storing content hashes for particular ENS domain name. And it's pretty clear how to do it with IPFS hashes, but there's, at least to me, it's not immediately clear how to do it with how swarm hashes fit into the multi-hashes library, which basically is a library that takes your hash and encodes it so that you can then figure out what standard that hash belongs to. It's not explicit how Swarm could take advantage of that, and so you can actually reference a Swarm hash from ENS. So that's either something that maybe needs to be clarified a bit to make it easier for people who want to publish Swarm hashes on ENS, or actually be added to the multi-hashes standard.
Yeah. This is very interesting. I mean, essentially, we should be having an ENS domain for status for whatever it is that we're doing, and be serving there simultaneously, if we can.
Should we? Oh, sorry, good.
I was just going to say, to Jasek's point, it really doesn't seem so much like a and, unless you want to have two versions where we have a version published on IPFS and a version published on Swarm. But it seems like with all the things that we've mentioned, given how like there's a significant sort of tooling and support for IPFS and like a gateway provider like Infura, which implements load balancing and all kinds of infrastructure to make sure that when that hash is published, it's the content will be pinned on the network and also be able to scale as loads increase. But also with the work that's been done with implementing IPFS and ENS, it's pretty straightforward to do it with IPFS. And I think at the very least, there's maybe more clarity needs to be done. I think it would be more involved to get it done with Swarm, given the current state of where Swarm is today. I could be wrong about this, but if I am, I would love to see a simple, how to publish a DApp with the ENS resolution using Swarm, like guide.
Can I suggest that we focus this conversation to outside of this meeting, perhaps? Or do you want to keep talking about it? Just in the interest of time.
I think that we can leave it here. I'm happy that you guys would be willing to explore these issues wherever the forum is. I think we've served the purpose in the call agenda today.
Cool. So yeah, we can talk about it more offline, and then if there are specific issues that we want to bring up with the whole group, we can revisit at the next meeting as well. So next point, so general infra update. Jacob, are you online?
Yeah, I am. Listening all the time. Well, the main focus was, as probably everyone noticed, were the Jenkins changes to make the builds parallel for all platforms. And that's pretty much done. I think if we look at the PR page for Jenkins, it's mostly green. So I think we've achieved what we wanted. There's still some improvements to be done for release builds. So we don't have to like 20 different Jenkins files. I've already started removing those. And hopefully by the end, we're just gonna have one or maybe two at worst, and Groovy files that we reuse. So that's definitely an improvement. And other than that, yeah, as Jacek mentioned, we now have a small Swarm cluster and slowly iterating on it, so it's more stable. I actually this weekend improved it by adding storage limits, because by default it just uses the whole disk, which is kind of meh. But that's why you have to read the manual pages, I guess. But yeah, the most of the work was with Jenkins. Everything else was kind of small fish all around. I don't think it's worth talking about. I guess one thing worth noting is that we now have Hong Kong fleet, which I managed to get working with Elastic IPs after some fighting with the Terraform module for Alibaba Cloud. Although I've noticed there are some issues with connectivity with Alibaba Cloud. I have to investigate that. I think it's just with the VPN, which is weird, but I'll have to check that out. But that's really most of what has been happening.
Cool. Peer-to-peer, Adam?
Yep, hello. In the last weeks, we were pretty much merging Rendezvous, Peer's Discovery protocol, and this is already running on staging fleet, and it's working fine. So the next step that we'd like to do is to update beta fleet so that it also has the same nodes. The current problem is that beta fleet is super old. It runs status go, which is over a month old or even more. But yeah, right now we have means to test that between staging and beta. So we'll do that. Next things that we started looking into, there are two efforts that we'd like to really push forward as soon as possible. The first one is some incentivization layer for Whisper and mail servers. And the second one is spam protection. This is probably gonna be like we are gonna try to figure out the most versatile but also the easiest solution for that. For now, Jakub looked into some OS level spam protection that we can do, like for example IP rate limiting and some settings on the OS level pretty much. But our goal is to figure out something more on Whisper level pretty much. And Dimitri, he's working on that. He already prepared some findings about IP rate limiting on more Whisper level that takes into consideration the traffic, the bandwidth that you are happy to use from your mobile phone, because I guess that's gonna be the huge and like the most difficult part, like how to protect your small smartphone from getting too much traffic. Because infrastructure that's kind of covered with proof of work and built-in mechanism in Whisper, but regarding the phone, that's gonna be more tricky. So we're probably gonna focus on that. However, this is still not decided yet. We are still kind of in a phase where we're talking on Slack and like throwing different ideas to figure it out what we would like to and how we would like to approach it. So yeah, hopefully we are gonna decide on something concrete, something specific that we'd like to start implementing as soon as possible. So yeah. Also, like in the last week, you are also testing LES discovery. So right now it's possible to get LES servers from the Ethereum network. However, it's super slow. You need to be lucky to actually find some free LES servers in the Ethereum network that you could connect to. But this was like the first part, like the first kind of thing that we did to unblock the swarm that's gonna integrate LES into the app. So yeah, that was done as well. Yeah, I guess that was pretty much all. Any questions about it?
All right, cool, thank you. Security, Corey?
Hello. Let's see. Last 2 weeks have been relatively busy, but let's see. Me and Jacob went and discussed. I guess the previous time we had this meeting, I introduced the platform threat stack that we're going to try and look at to basically monitor our infrastructure. Me and Jacob and Jacek had a kind of call with them to give our overall what they could offer us. I need to go through and do somewhat of like a infrastructure audit to see how much of our infrastructure that we have, because they do 1-year terms, we would like to potentially start with. And so I'm figuring out what we want to look at and if we want to use it, if it makes sense across the board. I'll have a pricing model for that relatively soon, and then we can decide on whether or not it's something we want to do. I'm leaning on the side of yes. So we have some type of incident response platform that can handle any type of issue if there is one, as opposed to nothing. Let's see. I'm building a diagram over how all the keys work within status, and starting from like the seed phrase and the hierarchies above, so where things are generated, where they're used, and what the risk profile is of all of that, as kind of the start to an overall risk profile of the entire company. So like basically, and that I think will end up becoming some type of public blog post, so people, one, understand how keys are created across the board in blockchain, so they have some type of intuition there, and then how status uses those keys for various things. And this is going to have, I guess, multiple steps. One being how things are currently done, how things will be done in the near future as we break away the whisper key from the account key, because right now it's all the same thing. And then how the hardware takes over this and gives you a better, I guess, better security with interacting with status. And then let's see what do I have here. Oh yeah, Oscar came up with the idea, talking with me about a company and personal security week, which is going to be a long checklist of personal procedures, things to do, things to look at when auditing yourself with regards to what your security practices are. I've made a discuss topic that brings up this idea, why we need it, and what the the bird's eye view of it is. It's like a week broken up into multiple sections of various tasks that need to be done, starting with before actually doing it, buying a few hardware things like a UV key and maybe a printer if you need one, checking your hardware to make sure that things are up to date. So maybe we can start working on getting you a new laptop if you're using really old systems, things like that. I would appreciate if the discuss thread got some more eyes so I can get some more feedback on what people would like out of that, so I can structure it appropriately. And that's just, if you go to discuss, it's called, got a link here somewhere, let's see. Yes, Personal and Company Security Week. It's gotten some views, but no comments. So head over there and comment it up.
Maybe just repost it in general.
It should be in, like, the link should be in both general and core. But it's on the front page of discuss if you go there.
I guess maybe now we can also just ask the question, like, what specifically would people like to get out of this week? What do people generally think it's a good idea or bad idea, or what would people like to be after this is done? It doesn't even have to be only about sort of personal security, but also just status in general and stuff like that. Like, what would people like to come away with?
Yeah, because this week is partially about like status coming up with things and ways of everyone knowing what to do or where to go in case something happens. So like we have that stuff in line.
Right, cool. Maybe we can post this sort of more specific checklist and then see if there's some feedback. Maybe that would help in terms of getting more thoughts. I don't know.
I can put the current iteration of the checklist. The checklist is currently made in a HackMD document. I'll post that to discuss so people can start looking at that to see what we're looking at in terms of like, because it's built off of the My Crypto blog, which I'll also link, about just like security for dumb people and smart people too, basically. And it's quite comprehensive, and I'd be curious to see how much of it people feel is necessary, or if there's anything that's missing.
So do we need an O'Reilly cover for status security for dummies, Corey?
Yeah. Yeah. Or yeah, pick one of those or pick one of those weird animals, and we'll do one of those O'Reilly books.
I propose a wyvern.
Duly noted.
Question: Do we end up somewhere with the security champions and Stride sort of threat modeling?
No, I'm waiting on. So this next week at the Security Conference in Berlin, I think we're going to be fleshing out some. I'm going to be trying to push the idea of this to a lot of the security community there to see what we can come up with. I'm hoping that we can come up with some cool ideas around this in terms of like how to implement this stuff inside these organizations. If we can all come to agreement, then we can push it out for something larger than what status is currently, as opposed to like
Isn't there a spreadsheet somewhere comparing all of the security aspects of different messaging clients, and there was additional things that were added? Does anybody remember where that was? Did you ever see that, Corey?
Yeah. I don't think I did.
This securechatmessenger.com or something, and then there's also a spreadsheet in our drive that I think Andrea started, which has
that would be really awesome to look at, Corey, because there's a lot of work that's been done there, basically.
I'd love to see that.
Yeah, I'll try to dig it up and add it to the notes.
Yeah. So I'm hoping that at the Berlin conference I come out with things to start running with here, but I don't want to start working on something before that's over and then change minds. So
makes sense.
I think that anywhere that we do interoperability, I mean, that's going to be a big push that we're looking for. So anywhere that we can get ourselves involved with developing standards is going to be awesome and productive work.
I think that meetup in Berlin is going to push that forward quite a bit. Like the Telegram channel that we're a part of in there seems to be moving around the line. Like that's the whole point of that entity existing, is developing standards across the entire community. And that's, I would like to do it that way, as opposed to starting something and then doing that and then trying to make everybody change what we did beforehand. But that's really about, I think, all I have going right now, as opposed to like we have a few audits going on with the hardware wallet and the ENS smart contract. I got my fingers in all that kind of stuff, but that's obvious.
Oh yeah, something I just remembered. Barry, so the last piece that we need for the CryptoLife website is your interactive contract thing together with Ned, the pixel drawer. So yeah, that would be, we can definitely launch the page without that, with a placeholder, but it would be really great if we can get that moving and get it integrated with pushing out with community on how it is that we actually do that stuff. So I'd be really appreciative on that.
Yeah, I'm actually gonna start looking at that. Hopefully, well, I plan to actually make that my primary focus next week as I wrap things up this week.
All right. Do we have anything else on security? Any specific topics
coming to mind right now?
Yeah.
Unless somebody has something for me that they'd like me to look at / do.
All right. Testing. Do we have anyone from testing here? All right. Client updates, mobile. I don't know if Igor or Roman is here.
Sorry, do you hear me?
Yeah.
Do you want to hear some update regarding mobile set?
Sure. If there's something like that it would be useful. Yeah.
Nothing like new from our side. I'm still working on this integration of React navigation. It's under review now, and we'll probably measure it on tomorrow or like during this week. Nothing more interesting from our side, honestly. So just I suppose new release was cut previous week, and application should be released today or tomorrow. So that's probably it.
Okay. Desktop.
Hey guys. So current progress, if we've been fixing more of the scroll view performance and layout issues, some weird jumps in the scroll view, which is basically embedded into our main chat window, nearing completion with finally implementation of mobile warnings, system warnings and notifications, and more work being done on Jenkins builds and closure script testing via spec integration, and also some minor fixes like fixing SVG blurriness and some more fixes to pop-up menus. We've reused a generic React Native pop-up menu component, which works quite fine, but there are still some on-press handler issues that preclude it from being used properly, which we would like to do because many features in UX depend on the presence of a context menu. So yeah, that's roughly our update for now.
All right. Research, Jacek. Maybe he dropped. Looks like Jacek dropped. All right. Chat team. Pedro, Andrea.
Yeah, I guess it's mostly been around the PFS implementation. So we now have some builds that people can use to test PFS. I've been working on the PFS spec, and there's been some other smaller tasks like implementing log level configuration for status go from the app UI, as well as remembering the location of each chat, so you don't have to scroll up every time you return to a chat. Those are the main issues that we've been working on.
Just wanted to ask, have we put any thought into how to bring back private group chats? Like how difficult that will be? I know it's not the sort of first priority of the PFS work and so on, but do we have any rough idea of how we can go about that?
The easiest way is probably just to do pairwise encryption. And so that would kind of work out of the box. So essentially like send one message for each participant. So that requires no changes. The only problem is that it's fairly expensive because you would have to calculate a POV for every message. And, you know, like basically you send one message for each participant. There are ways to do, you know, like make it more efficient because already Whisper provides us with the way to send the same message to multiple recipients for topics. So you could do that. So, you know, like if we were to do it today, you know, like I would say do pairwise encryption first, see, you know, start by pushing it out a version that caps the limit of participant to say 20 for now, and then look into using a shared topic. And at that point, it's much more performant.
I think someone in the Reddit post of the last update asked about that, if someone would want to try and tackle that answer on there if you want to do that.
We can do, yeah. And also, like, not to mention the fact that the chart, actually the management protocol needs to be probably revisited a bit. So that's just a high level way, you know, like adding user, removing users. Those messages need to be revisited a bit because things have changed since they were first implemented.
Cool. I mean, that sounds like a simple start in capping it, and it can even be lower if it turns out to be expensive. But I think that would be awesome. We could get that as a sort of iteration 2 or 3 or whatever it might be. All right, DAP. Anyone? Julian or Andre?
Hey, yeah, sorry. So mostly we focused on implementing the Web3 opt-in mechanism, which is something that we are doing with the MetaMask team. So there's been a lot of discussion around this standard and a lot of changes. So we are always trying to catch up with the latest EIP details that are frequently updated. But it looks like the current definition should be the last one. So hopefully we should settle on this one. But yeah, essentially the idea is to improve the privacy of that browser and make sure we don't leak as a browser too much information to dApps themselves. But still, well, you don't want to be completely blind as a dApp developer, so you still want to have some kind of clue if dApp are supported or not. So it's kind of a trade-off here. So that's why there were some updates on this EIP. But yeah, as I said, it looks like the current incarnation should be the last one. So we are finishing the implementation, and we will push a blog post soon to make sure that we can be up to date with MetaMask, and because essentially the idea is to deprecate the old Web3 injection and make sure that all dApps will be updated at some point, hopefully soon. So there is a target date, but yeah, I'm not sure if we will be able to stay with this date, given that there were some recent changes. But yeah, I mean, it's probably something that MetaMask is considering, so we will synchronize with them. And then the other big part that we are working on is related to extensions, because we have some meetup at S Berlin, and we will present some high-level things related to extensions and some demonstration. And hopefully, I think Andy is making also some presentation for the hackathon itself, and my plan is to have him brief hackathon participant to extensions and eventually start considering how they could use it and get some feedback from them. They will not be able to implement anything really usable or useful with the current state of extensions, but at least if they are familiar with it, it would be a great way to just initiate some discussion and get some interesting feedback. So what we are finishing right now is a simple chat command that will allow to send some NFT, so like CryptoKitty, as an extension. So it's not something that is currently implemented in Status. And so that's the whole point, to have it implemented as an extension, so you can just get this extra bit of functionality in Status, but then remotely in a decentralized and secure way through extension. So yeah, that's pretty much it. And most of the dApp team will be at S Berlin. So I'm not sure who will be there too, but yeah, we will be happy to discuss extensions specifically in more details. Yeah, that's it for me.
Cool. Wallet. Anyone from Wallet? All right. So I guess specific ideas update. So deterministic builds. Jacob, do you have any thoughts on this one?
Yeah, I think the proper way to start this before we get people from other teams to join in the effort is to make a proof of concept with not even with status Go first, but with some kind of very simple Go package to verify that we can have a usable build system that would work with Jenkins, and a way to test that the package is being built in a deterministic way, and kind of start with I guess some kind of checklist or something like that of what kind of steps we have to go to do the same for first status Go, and then eventually for status React, which is much bigger challenge. So I think I'm going to start working on this kind of proof of concept before even we start the swarm, because the swarm, at least for me, I don't know if I'm thinking about this correctly, is for an organized effort. And I think before I know more clearly about the steps we have to take and how we can delegate tasks within teams and so on, I don't think it's a good idea to start it. But I'm spitballing here.
Do you need any help for it? And could it be that there's some parallel work that can be done on the closure side in terms of locking down packages and so on?
Well, yes, of course, but that's, as I said, that's status React. And I think before we get to status React, which is the hardest part of this all, we should start with something simpler, which is initially just a basic example Go package, because I want to start afterwards with status Go. And once we have that working and it's deterministic and we have an idea of how to do this properly, then we can start with status React, which is going to be a real challenge, especially with platforms like macOS and iOS. Yeah, I think initially I'm just gonna gather what I can about the process, and when I have a more clear view of what we will have to do exactly, then I think it will be sensible to start the swarm and start cooperating with others.
All right, cool. I guess PFS we already talked about. Documentation. Do we have anyone from that one?
So not a lot of update on the documentation front. I think that's something that we will like restart maybe after S-Berlin. But yeah, essentially, well, there is some kind of basic skeleton of the architecture of documentation website. So anyone is free to add documentation when it makes sense, or if they spot some issues, or if they want to add a shiny diagram. But it's still fairly basic, but at least for now, I would say it's sufficient. But then the next step will be to make sure that we have a more comprehensive, high-level view of what we want to show in the website itself. Because yeah, it's not 100% clear now. So once we will have this higher-level vision, well, then we will need some help from like every various teams to write something and just make sure that we just feel like the various area that we have so far. But for now, it's mostly focused on building status or on using the WebDAP API. And I'm writing something related to extensions right now. But everybody should be free to just suggest things and make pull requests. It's just a simple markdown files to write, so should not be very intense to do. So yeah, in general, I would say looking for feedback.
Are we going to remove the old wiki?
So I removed some pages, like the one related to building status, for instance, because they were completely irrelevant. We still had some pages related to chatbots, things like that. So I did clean up a bit, but then for the rest of the wiki, I'm not really sure actually. Still something to be discussed.
All right. Cool. So I guess that's all for the points. Does anyone have something that they feel like wasn't discussed, or something they want to talk about that has been talked about, but they want to say now?
I mean, regarding the PFS spec, I would appreciate some visibility. If people can go to the document and give some feedback on it, things that the document is missing or that can be improved, that would be great. I can get you the link.
I pasted it in the code.
Yeah.
Cool. All right, and then so one more thing. There's been talk about so we have people in the community that would like to sort of be on a call and maybe ask questions, or they want to contribute to certain specific things and so on. So one idea that we had was that we could just append it to this meeting. So maybe have it like, I don't know, like half an hour, like so from now for 30 minutes or something like this. I don't know, what do people think of that? Does it make sense to have it as part of this call, or is it too much? I don't know, what are people's thoughts? And is this something that people would want to sort of help out with, or yeah, what are people's thoughts?
This call would be probably extended quite a bit. I don't know if we broke into the timing of this call, then we wouldn't get to all the things we need to get to. If we tacked on,
it would be appended.
Yeah, then this would be really long.
So yeah, there's this is advocacy program that's getting worked on by Sean and Hutch, and then there's the people ops things that are going on about how it is that we involve people more. So I think it would be a really good thing for us to do once it is that we've got it settled, how it is that the advocacy program is going to get launched and how we're going to be doing these different compensation models for people. Adding it on would probably be cool. I just don't think that we're quite there yet. Maybe in a month or so.
All right, cool. So maybe we can wait, and maybe it's also like, if it's too long, we could also have it at a separate time.
Well, maybe we could do it bi-weekly, so that 1 week is the full core dev call, and then the alternating week is a half hour or 1 hour core dev interaction with community, if that would work for everybody.
I think that's a good idea.
That's town hall. That's during the town hall.
Oh, never mind.
Yep. All right, we can see what comes out of it. I guess it also depends on what the nature of it would be. If it's specific contributors that are talking about things that we're building and so on, maybe it would make sense to include them in this call. But if it's more of I want to build React, it's like Stash React kind of thing, then maybe a dedicated call and sort of troubleshooting would make more sense. I guess it depends on the audience, right?
I think we can set standards for that, and I think that stuff will come out of Hutch and Andy and Sean's work with the advocacy program, that we can structure that and just have some sort of guidelines and standards about what's acceptable to participate with the core devs, and we post that up somewhere, and we do an announcement and say this is what we're ready to engage on. I think we just find those standards. The work's getting done right now for us to define that stuff.
All right, cool. Anything else? All right. Pedro?
Okay, cool. So I'll take the notes and prepare a blog post and do an embed with the call, Oscar. All right, like
Great.
we did.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Okay.
All right. Thanks everyone for tuning in, and see you in 2 weeks or all year. But for this specific
Thank
call,
you.
take care. Cheers.
Thank you, guys.
Yeah. Cheers.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.